share with you the new features in Lightroom 6 or Lightroom CC. Before we get to the features, let's quickly address the fact that we now have two names for what is basically the same piece of software. The difference being Lightroom 6 is the standalone version that you can just buy, plunk down an amount of cash, $149 or $80 or $79 if we want to be specific about it, for the student teacher edition. There will be an upgrade price as well that should be somewhere around that $79. Or Lightroom CC, which is now what comes bundled in the Creative Cloud subscription package. There are actually several different packages. The one that most of us are interested in is the Photoshop and Lightroom bundle together for $9.99 a month. One of the most common questions I get is, what program as a new photographer should I learn to use to edit my photos? Lightroom or Photoshop? And the answer I give most people is this Creative Cloud Photographers Bundle for $9.99 a month gives you access to both of these programs. Some people don't like the idea of renting software. I'm not going to get into that discussion right now, but I will say that 95% of the editing I do is in Lightroom, and then I'll take a trip over to Photoshop for a couple of things, and I expect that percentage of time I spend in Photoshop to actually decrease, because some of the stuff that I went there for was the HDR and the photo merging for panoramas. That has now been brought over to Lightroom in this new version. So let's take a few moments to quickly look at the differences in Lightroom 6. So the general interface to Lightroom 6 looks virtually identical to Lightroom 5 and even earlier versions as well. No real changes there. We're just going to focus on one of the new buttons right down here, and that is People. Or what we're mostly going to be calling this is our facial recognition or face detect. This has now been added to Lightroom 6, and I have to say in Lightroom CC, I might use those interchangeably. Don't be confused. Again, same program. I have to say this is one of the more exciting features for me. Some people are going to use this more and some people are going to be using it less, but the folks I've talked to who are using this in iPhoto and other programs that have been offering this for a while are very excited about this feature coming in now. Now, this button right here will jump you into the People, where it has started to go through my galleries and find faces that it will allow me to tag. Now, some of those faces have been stacked, and if I hit this little stack button, which we've seen in other versions of Lightroom being used for time stacks, or you could just create a stack to kind of keep your clutter in control, it will expand and show you. It clearly recognizes that this is me 3 times in a row, so it's stacking those, and then I can come in here and I can type who it is, Toby, and hit enter, and now those people have been added, and Toby, me, appears up here. I can now come through, and if there's other Tobys in this group, I can add them and drag them up here to add. Let's do this right here. This is Henry, and I'm going to hit enter, named, and now Henry is going to appear up here. And here's another Henry, and I can drag and, I should be able to drag, there we go, drag and drop that Henry on there, and now we have added additional features. Oh wait, that is, it's asking with a question mark, has it found me? Yes, it has, so I can hit this little question mark and it's got me. Now, up here, it is currently detecting faces in the film strip, and this is a little dangerous. Look at how big this progress bar is and how small the progress has been. Underneath this right here, we have the ability to pause our face detection, and I'm going to go ahead and hit pause right now. Actually, I think what's happening is I did give it permission a little while ago to look it up in a current film strip or collection, and so now it's going through. If I move out of this collection, though, I'm going to come down here in my messiness to a quick samples. And it should stop. Well, it's going to detect faces very quickly now in this because it is limiting its face detection currently to the film strip. And we should be able to come back up in here, and I don't know if I can get, there we go. Lightroom will index the faces of people in all of your photos. So again, I limited it to a collection, and when I'm ready to let the Lightroom search my whole catalog, I will then click on all photos and probably do that before I go to bed and just let Lightroom run overnight, and in the morning wake up and hopefully there will be a huge pile of faces to go through and then tag. The other thing that is new right here that I'll talk about briefly is the address lookup. Now this was something that was already within Lightroom, and I talked about it in episode 7 of our Lightroom for Beginners video series, which is just $2.49 per episode. That one is all about geotagging. One of the neat things that you can do is when you bring in images, photos with location data added, you can then say, look up a nice human readable address. Not many of us can instantly see a latitude and longitude and know exactly where it is, whether it's within the state of Vermont or Alaska or Singapore. But we can, of course, look at an address that says, you know, Main Street, Oklahoma. And Lightroom will go get that information for you. It now is pulled out of the catalog preferences. It was called reverse geo encoding lookup, and it's now part of this little preference panel here underneath the main panel that will allow you to do an address lookup. I think that should be on if you use any kind of location data on any of your photos, because it makes them more searchable, more friendly to find based on a variety of factors, not just latitude and longitude. Let's move on to, these are going to be just quick looks just to give you the headline features of what's next in Lightroom. And talk about our merging. We have both panoramas and HDR. In this case, I have examples of both. I have a series of shots that I took, and I have a free Lightroom video on creating panoramas, but now it's a little dated because in that version, your goal was, or your options were, to go to Edit and then Merge to Panorama in Photoshop. We now have a new menu item here in Lightroom 6 or CC called Photo Merge, and we have an option of Panorama. It's even got a keyboard shortcut of Alt-M. So I'm just going to click that. It's going to stitch those together, and I'll say that on first glance our options here are quite limited. Let's just go through. We have our spherical projection, our cylindrical, and our perspective. And you can see that that really kind of distorts and gives it a look that it was taken with a much more wide angle lens. I think the spherical, that looked best. The other thing that I can do is say auto crop, so it's going to automatically for me crop out those little bits of extras. And this is why it's really nice when you're shooting a panorama to include much more than you think you need, because when they get stitched together you get these little gaps or little run-ins from the tops and the bottoms that can cause your panorama to be a little bit smaller or more narrow than you want. And I'm just going to hit the merge button. And we can see up here in the top left corner that it is creating the panorama. While we're waiting for that, let's move out of this view into grid view. No people in here, so we've moved to the grid view while it is working. All right, so it finished the panorama. It created a DNG file, which over in Photoshop they usually are a TIFF. Let's just double click it and take a look. There it is. It looks pretty good, and we can come down here to our dimensions and see that it is a 15,000 pixels by 5,700 pixels, actually a little bit less cropped. And it even has geolocation information in there as well, because all of these pictures were geotagged, so it brought that over for the panorama as well. So that is the Stunning Panoramas update to Lightroom 6, but you also saw that there's a photo merge for HDRs. Now I have 3 shots here that I took also in Yellowstone, actually technically just outside Yellowstone National Park in Idaho, and I'm going to right click on these 3 and I'm going to go back to photo merge, and now I'm going to try HDR. One of the big questions is there are a lot of standalone programs, or at least there are several good standalone programs, Photomatix being one of them, and Photoshop as well, that allow you to really create HDR images. I have mixed feelings about HDR images in general. My rule of thumb usually is if I can't tell it's an HDR and it is an HDR, that's a good thing. Now, there are people who love the very kind of artistry look and oversaturated colors to their HDR images. I'm not as much a fan of those, but I certainly recognize that some people are and they have a place. I will say that the HDR merge options here within Lightroom seem fairly basic, and for those who are serious about it, I believe you are going to still be spending money for Photomatics or working in Photoshop so that you have that complete tonal control and you can create images like that. To me, this image that it just created, I have basically no options. Auto align I want on to make sure if I was hand holding the image that it's going to line it up and make sure that there's no ghosting. Auto tone, yes. And then the de-ghosting amount for any movement. You know, I have a choice of none to high, as you can see, and I can say show de-ghost overlay, and it looks like right in this area and here, this duck probably moved a little bit in the scene, and the ripples in the water were probably most noticeable in that area. So that's where it's doing that. Let's turn it off for a second and see if we see a little extra ghosty going on down here. Yep. It's just faint, but that ghost is, or that duck is in two pieces. Not usually how you want your wild live ducks to be. So I'm just going to turn that back on medium. I think seemed really good. And then I'm going to wait until it finished building the preview and hit the merge button. And again, we've got our little progress indicator up here on the top. And it seems to be doing a much faster job of this than Panoramas. One of the overall changes to Lightroom 6/CC is supposed to be much faster performance. It is now making use of our graphics cards in our computers, and as a result, we should see performance improvements. We'll come back. You know, I haven't used it enough to say. That is something that I look forward to. I feel like Lightroom for the most part works well for me. There are some tools, especially adjustment brushes, where when you start really adding layers, I feel it slow down. I would like to see that, or I hope that that is better. And so now in here, I imagine it's a DNG again. Yep, it's a DNG and it's been labeled HDR DNG, and there it is. Now, because it's a DNG, I can do things to it. Maybe I want to further adjust this HDR image. So I'm going to move over to the Develop module, and I'm going to use this as an example to talk about one of the new features in Lightroom 6. So the graduated filter is very powerful. I got some extra ones here. These are part of the presets that come with our PhotoRec TV Lightroom Beginner series. But I'm just going to come up here to exposure, and it allows you to gradually filter over an area of your image and fade it out nicely. It is a tool that I think a lot of photographers and a lot of folks new to Lightroom overlook. And Christina in episode, I think it's 3, just gives you an incredible look into how well you can use this. Now, there is a gradient mask I've added. Let's really increase it just for example's sake. In Lightroom 6, we now have the ability to come over and modify this mask with a brush. Press Shift-T to toggle between edit and brush modes. So I can press Shift-T on the keyboard, and now I have a brush. Let's say, for instance, that I don't want these treetops to get as dark as the sky. My goal here in bringing down this exposure, and again, I'm way overdoing this just so you can really see the difference. The other thing we could do is say show selected mask overlay, so you see this overlay of where this filter is applied. Let's leave that on for a second. And I can come in here, and I should be able to hit erase. And I am now erasing this. I'm going to hit my bracket keys to make this larger. And this is not going to be a good example, or I should say the results are not going to be good. But this shows you that you can now finally control exactly where these graduated and radial filters, so right now I'm using the graduated, but you also have the radial filters, are applied. So let's take this show selected mask overlay back off, and yes. Quite ridiculous in that we have a huge discrepancy between our sky and those trees now. But let's, bring our exposure back up a little bit, just a little, and see if we can paint it back on. So let's go back to the brush and go to A. And I also want my auto mask on. This is a really powerful tool that will allow it to automatically find the edges and avoid those. So I'm just going to kind of come in here and paint this exposure Let's get our flow down a little bit so it's not as heavy. Paint the exposure of this gradient in here to reduce the halo around the trees. So again, the goal was to bring out a lot of the detail in the sky by lowering the exposure, but we don't want the tops of the trees to go completely dark like they do here or over here. And so we erased it using the brush, and that's a new feature in Lightroom 6. So I'm just going to click Done, and that was enough to illustrate that technique. I mean, if we wanted to, we could come in here and do the radial as well. Let's do something crazy, like crazy saturation right down here in this area. I'm going to invert that mask so everything inside this circle is crazy saturated. And now come back over to the brush again and maybe just brush. Oops, sorry, I wanted to erase that off. Erase that off over here and over here. This really, besides the faces, may be my new favorite feature of Lightroom 6. This is powerful because the graduated tools, both the radial and the graduated filter and the radial filter are very powerful. I use them frequently, and now being able to use those kind of over half the image, but then fine tune a small piece is really welcome. Other changes that I want to talk about briefly is we now have an updated slideshow module. This is something that some people use often, some people don't. I will say that Christina and I use this quite often at weddings. We do a same-day slideshow of a few of our favorite images from the day. I don't think we'll be using any of the very new features, but it still is it can be a useful tool. The new features to the advanced video slideshow allow you to kind of combine still images, video, and have this Ken Burns-like still image motion. You've seen that on those documentaries from Ken Burns, where you have the kind of sliding or filling of the frame of a still image. It gives it just a little bit more dynamicness, a little bit more life to it. It allows you to do that. And it also will now allow you, let's go down here, to say sync slides to music. And that is going to actually try to match your slide transitions to your beats of your music, which again, that's another thing that can really just kind of up the game on your slideshow and just make it a little bit better. So if you are already using slideshows, these updates may be welcome. If you haven't used it, don't worry about it. Another new feature of Lightroom is, and this one might be even sillier than slideshow, I really don't know anybody who still uses this, but you can create web galleries within Lightroom and then share those out to different places. I talk about this in our Lightroom series for beginners in one of the videos where I talk about all of the different ways to share your images. Don't spend a lot of time on it because again, it feels a little outdated, but Lightroom has now updated this. These are HTML5 compatible galleries, so they are going to work much better on mobile devices than they did previously. They really were pretty dumb, non-responsive galleries before. Again, if this is something you've already used in previous versions of Lightroom, it may continue to be useful for you. If you haven't, then this update really isn't that exciting. Other changes to Lightroom beyond these basic ones, or other changes beyond these, is to the mobile apps. So the Android app is now updated so that you can use Lightroom Mobile on tablets. Previously, it was only really on phones. And Lightroom in general has promised much greater emphasis on Android devices in the coming year. They're still not giving any dates or times yet, but they have said that they will be bringing more of that feature soon. I'm going to slide this web page over here and let's just run through real quick. We talked about the HDRs, the panoramas, the faster performance using the graphics card, the facial recognition I showed very briefly. I'm going to be back with detailed videos on all of these topics. Some of them will be only for those folks who have bought the full series of Lightroom, but I'll of course be sharing free snippets as well. The video slideshows, the improved galleries, the better control of filters allowing you to brush the graduated and radial filters, the photo sharing with the improved web galleries, and more. Lightroom is now on all Android devices, and your edits sync back to your computer much nicer. And that is one of the big differences with Lightroom CC is that mobile syncing to the web and to all of those mobile devices. I said mobile there several times, but you get what I mean. You do not get access to these apps when you buy the standalone version, and you do not get that automatic syncing because there's nothing to sync it to. You can, of course, publish out, but to the Behance network, you don't get this automatic kind of Lightroom galleries sync that you get with the CC version. The new app that Adobe has released recently, Slate, should be coming to Android as well soon. And this kind of gives you this, it's supposed to be a very kind of desktop publishing 3.0 if we want to go to that, being the web being 2.0, or actually I don't know where we're supposed to be saying where the web is these days. But it looks neat, and I hope that comes to Android at some point in the future. These copy and paste enhancements are for adjustments that you make to images on the iPad or iPhone. You can now adjust multiple ones, and that's a very powerful feature that I've shown in Lightroom, but not on the mobile devices. And there's a presentation mode on the mobile devices, faster photo searching, and a quick composition adjustment for aligning and auto straightening your photos, which is another very powerful thing. I'll be honest, there are features and things that I have learned in Lightroom from watching Christina's videos that she has made, including some of the tips and tricks in the auto alignment module that does so much of the work for you. And then you take those and apply them to my episode 4, which really sets up powerful uses of Lightroom. You have this program that can do so much for you, and you want to make it do most of that work hands off just when you import. And that's one of the things that I've found that I've loved about Lightroom, and really has helped me see the power in being able to edit multiple photos at once, or even just edit multiple photos as they're imported. And so then there's very little left for me to do. I think a lot of people feel like if I shoot RAW, I have to edit all of my photos. No, you don't. You can set up systems and ways in Lightroom painlessly that will do most of that work for you. I think that is all that I wanted to show here in Lightroom 6. As I said, I will be back with lots more. Please leave a comment down below about what your favorite new feature of Lightroom 6 is. And I'm also curious, I've asked this before, many people, the last time I asked a poll about Lightroom standalone versus the Creative Cloud, because they did have a Creative Cloud option for Lightroom before, it just was it had the same name. It didn't have a different name. It was in the Creative Cloud system. Are you ready to go to the Creative Cloud subscription-based model, or will you be buying the standalone, or will you look at another option? We had Photos for the Mac has come out and is a completely free version available to Apple users. We have Photoshop Elements, which combines some features of Lightroom and some of Photoshop and comes in at a much more affordable price. It's under $100. And then there are things like Capture One and several other options out there that are often more expensive. And some people make arguments for that maybe have they better noise reduction and raw engines. But for what we do here as professional photographers, especially Christina editing lots of weddings, Lightroom really provides the tools we need in a fairly efficient way. It's not perfect, but it makes me happy, and these new updates I am excited about, especially the performance improvements I hope to see, just how much that translates to a little bit smoother of actions moving forward. So that was a quick look at the new features in Lightroom 6 or Lightroom CC. As I've mentioned a couple times during this video, we have a series of videos that currently are at a sale price of just $249 each. Those were made with Lightroom 5. Over the next couple of weeks, we will be adding Lightroom 6 videos to that collection. Anybody who has purchased at the previous price will get the updates completely free. No additional cost to you at all. This sale price at $249 per episode has an end date. In just a few more weeks, it's going to go up to its $5. That still is a ridiculously low price for the content and quality you're getting. This was our first series of videos that we put out, and I wanted to price them so that people would say, I don't know who these guys are, but this price is low enough, I'm going to give it a try. The feedback has been absolutely fantastic, and we've been told by multiple people who have experienced other people's videos and content that we should be charging 5 to 6 times as much as we are. Well, we set the price, it is what it is, and you benefit from that. Take a look at these videos. They're all found at photorec.tv/shop. And if you have any questions, you can also search my channel. Lots of free Lightroom videos are available as well. And another way you can support videos like this and gain access to these Lightroom videos is to support me monthly on Patreon. That is a system where you donate some sort of amount of money per month and in return get access to things like my Lightroom videos. You don't pay for the videos, you support me monthly and you get immediate access to them and all future videos that come out. Right below this video is a link to the Patreon page. It's photorec.tv/support. I invite you to check that out, and thanks so much for all of those people, hundreds of people supporting me so far. Thank you.